Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Health and Safety Management, Week 2. And today being the 6th of August 2024, we'll be studying Health and Safety Management. That is the course. But the subject is Health and Safety Strategic Management. Being the Week 2. The name is H. Kwame Afaglo. I'm your presenter for today. The objectives for the discussions would be viewers would appreciate the essence of health and safety strategy at workplace. Then go through the possible weaknesses that faces health and safety management at workplace. Then, of course, you learn how to design or write or congregate to write the strategy for health and safety. Then you look at its assessment, the planning, the execution, assessment, and then continuous improvement. That's how to look at the whole health and safety management, putting it up together. Then you would appreciate or you would understand what we mean by health and safety culture. Then we look at standards of health and safety. All right. Without wasting enough time, because we have to go through a lot, bear with me. We'll have breaks along the line that will make it relatively easier for us to catch up with events and then understand. If you do not understand anything, don't hesitate to contact me on the email and then WhatsApp, YouTube that's available. This program is featured on YouTube. It's a series that is running on YouTube, so you could watch it. You could find it sometime on Facebook or social media generally, maybe WhatsApp. Okay, all right. So last week we dealt with the essentials of health and safety. Today we are looking at the strategic management aspect of it carefully. All right. What we seek to achieve is the intent. Why do you have to put up a strategic management plan and go through its execution to its continuous improvement within the organization? Why? One, there's a legal regime, and two, there are other benefits. The legal regime for the UK states carefully that every organization that has five or more employees, casual, part-time, full-timers, 5 or more, must have a strategic plan for health and safety. All right. Then, of course, those organizations that have employees below 4 or 4 and below, rather 4 and below employees, must not necessarily have it written, but must have it in their mind. For those organizations that have 5 or more, must have the strategic plan for health and safety written. That's the difference. It must be written. That's what the law says. The Health and Safety Global 65 says it must be written for the UK. Okay. Then, of course, it's no different from International Labour Organization, ILO, conventions. We'll come to that exactly. All right. Why do I have to mention ILO? Because International Labour Organization is saying that everybody has freedom to work, or everybody has a right to work in freedom, safe environment, and must be protected. It's a right. Okay. So those rights must be respected. So that means that health and safety is important. Health and safety is important. All right. Going on from that, from the legal regime, if an organization does not have health and safety, does that mean it will not be successful? It does not necessarily mean that. But it means that if it has a strategic plan, it knows where it is going when it comes to health and safety. It has a roadmap or a schema. Then it reduces or minimizes accidents, ill health at workplace, near misses at workplace to the barest minimum. If that happens, it improves performance. Customers have trust in the organization. Workers have trust that working with this organization, they will not go in safe and come out harmed or die in the process of work. See, people have a right to work in a free and safe environment. International Labour Organization. That's what it means. People know that when they get to this workplace and they get working, they are safe. They are sure that they can come in healthy and live healthy. That's the prime objectives. So organization that has a higher corporate image, goodwill among customers, those who even trade with them have trust that they know how to manage their workers and everybody around their surrounding carefully and dutifully. So those are all pluses. But if you don't have health and safety management plan or a plan, it will mean that there are so many documents that are shuffled around and given to the first aider or the one in charge of health and safety. There's no plan. So many papers. He doesn't know which one is critical and which one is less critical, or which one is important and then most important or not important. So it becomes difficult to manage. He doesn't even know which is the accident cases that has to be addressed and the near misses cases that has to be resolved. Has to minimize or control risk. It's not well defined to them. And then how to eliminate hazards are not known. But once you have the plan, you can carefully look at it and then eliminate hazards and reduce what? Or control risk. All right, let's go on to it. So generally, when we talk of the health and safety management, those are issues. It comes with financial benefit to the organization because performance apps, workers have trust in it and they know where to go when there's a miss. They know how to operate within the organization because the organization has been well structured and made safe. This is a document that has to be written. The strategic plan is a document that has to be written and implemented. Okay, so if it's a plan, the plan tells you that, look, it is a statement of intent. You have to establish the organization's health and safety aims and then objectives. The aim is unmeasurable. Then the objectives are specific and they are measurable and attainable. Let me just give you an example. The aim of the organization's health and safety is working here is safe. Working in company ABC or company XYZ or company MMOP is safe. It's just unboast. It's not measurable. However, when it comes to the specific objectives, it will state carefully, one, who are the senior managers behind the statement of intent as a strategic plan. The CEO or the MD would have to put his name against the statement, date it, and sign that this is under the authority of the highest personnel in the organization, that this statement is true as it is implemented. Then, of course, there must be a hierarchy of those who are going to implement it. The director for health and safety must be there, managers for health and safety, supervisors for health and safety, then first aiders must all be there. The hierarchy must be clearly spelled out so you can see on the board. That aside, you have to identify the places that are hazardous at the workplace. Each and every place that is hazardous at the workplace has to be properly identified. That can only be done by internal auditors. That is who? The first aiders, and of course the health and safety specialists, supervisors, and the managers. Each and every department, if it's a big company, each and every department, each lane and every nook has to be identified and specify where the risks are. Which item or substance is hazardous? When you have a hazardous chemical or hazardous place, what are the colors to be used? What are the codes? Has to be specified. Then you can then state under the objectives that we want to reduce accidents for the year 2024 to 0, and then near misses to 5. Then, of course, when we come to sick at workplace, sick whilst on the job, maybe to 2. That is being specific for the year. So it's a target. All right. That is just one aspect of it. So when you spell out that, you have identified where the hazards are. Then, of course, you have also looked at where the emergency procedures, you would have to write down emergency procedures appropriately. If the siren sounds, where do you go? Where are the egress? Where are the access? Where is the assembling point? What happens? Are there fire extinguishers? Are there buzzards? Are there showers that comes up to kill the hazard? Those are all has to be written. And at every place, if it's a story building, it has to be identified at every floor carefully. Meanwhile, let's take a break whilst we're going through. No, before we take a break, let's continue. Let's finish with the planning. Then when we come back, we'll get onto it. Then, of course, we have to do a risk assessment. You have in the statement of intent. That's the strategic plan. You have to establish what are the risks and how do you assess the risk? It is quantifiable. If you assess the risk, then what are the procedures to minimize the risk? If I enter the place of work, is a brick likely to hit on my head? Then do I have to put on a helmet? So you have a helmet. What if particles can enter my eye because I'm working in a dusty place? Then I need the goggles. What about earplugs? Yes, I'll need them if it is. Then what about sleeves? What about hand gloves? What about boots? What about particular uniform? Those are things that you do. Those are risk controlling, mitigation process. So you have the COSHH, that's the COSHH, COSHH, and then PPEs. What I mentioned, the PPE, that's the helmet, the goggles, the nose mask, nasal mask, the ear plugs, and then the boots are personal protective equipment, PPE. COSHH is control of substances hazardous to health. COSHH is control of substances hazardous to health. Say chemicals. What about other items that are hazardous to health? You have to identify them, spell them out, how to mitigate that risk, control that risk. If it happens that a substance, a chemical enters one's eye, what do? You have access to the eye wash, emergency. Then there's the first aider. Then there's the ambulance service to be called. Those are all procedures that must be properly known under specifics. You want to achieve this, you want to achieve this at the end of the year. It's periodic. So that when that is done, you then now go to what we call the execution. When you want to execute or perform the task, it will be, okay, let's take a break and go for execution. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Strategic Management of Health and Safety. All right, we've looked at the plan. We've looked at this plan and we look at the aims and the objectives. And whilst we are planning, the other bit of the planning is that we always have to ensure that we match the plan with resources. And that's where the Chief Executive matters is coming in. That the Chief Executive is making sure that they provide all the needed resources, financial resources to match it up and all other resources, human resources and all to match it up to make it meet. The target must be determined. Okay. All right. So whilst designing your plan, you set up targets. See, we would achieve this 0 accidents by 2024. That's the organization. We will achieve 5 near misses in 2024. We will achieve 3 sickness on duty for 2024. That's the organization's set objectives, specific. They have stated it specifically. So then you have to make sure that you match up this idea intent with the resources carefully. If you want to prevent near misses, make sure that the floors, shop floors are clean and clean regularly. Make sure that there are no slips. Make sure that items are arranged. Cleaners are always working and putting things in place. Those who are working are properly educated, trained in health and safety before this. They get employed. And then when they go to the departmental level, they are given the exact health and safety training too. So they know the specific. When you're planning, we have what you call management by objectives. When you are planning health and safety for big companies, you would have to allow the departments to come up with their objectives. The departments, all the departments in the big corporation must come up with their objectives for health and safety because they know the risk areas and they know the hazardous substances around. So they list all of them that will avoid this and that, and then this is what we are going to do. It's not just mentioning what we want to do in turn, but how it's supposed to be done. What are the resources to ensure that it is done are all spelled out. Then once the department finishes that as a committee, not one person, a committee in a big company, then they pass it on to the health and safety manager who would have all the departmental inputs together. Then make sure it matches up with the organization's plan, that organization's strategic plan, that there will be 0 accidents in the organization for the year 2024. Or there will be 5 near misses for the year 2024. That is how it looks like. Okay, so that's management by objectives. It starts from the bottom and then it goes to the top, to the apex. That's to the board level. It means that if you want to implement, the board must be aware If you planning, the board must see the plan, the final plan. And according to international management, the board, when it comes to health and safety, the board must be made aware. The board must be made aware of what health and safety intent, statement of intent of the organization is. And they must have annual audits reports. The board must have annual audit reports. So one, the intent must be shown to the board and the board must approve it, because the chief executive is the one who does signs onto it and the board must approve it before it signs onto it. Then from there it goes into execution. When we get into execution, that whole plan, because it started from the department will now have to train everybody, especially when they know the hazards and the risk, to minimize accident cases, minimize sickness at workplace, and then minimize near misses. Of course, any of them that happens must be reported and recorded, and then needed remedial measures taken. When that is done, the whole account, the report is passed on to the health and safety manager for a committee to review. We've not gotten to review. So you plan, you execute, and whilst you executing, you have to teach everybody through training. First induction training before the person gets hired, and then goes to the department and given another induction, departmental induction training in health and safety. Then whilst on board, whilst working, he or she must attend meetings to be reminded of, see signs of all this. And the plan must always be on the notice board for each and every worker to see. The plan, the health and safety plan, must be on the notice board for each and everyone to see. Why? Because a safe working environment is the most appropriate place for every employee, the employer himself, even the insurance company. It means that you have to communicate. That's the point. You have to communicate health and safety appropriately to each and everybody in a simple manner that is visible, that is practicable, that is doable, that is achievable for everyone to see and appreciate and live by it. It must become a culture, health and safety culture. So we'll come to health and safety culture. So it means that there must be appropriate communication along the line. So if you want a health and safety culture when you're executing, there must be communication. It must be short, simple, and sweet to everybody. Short, simple, and sweet to everybody. Right. When that is done, everybody is given a training before he or she starts or gets employed. And periodically, they are given health and safety training. It could be on KUSH, it could be on the PPEs and all that stuff. It could be food hygiene, if it's a food industry. All right. So based on that, you now have stated the health and safety in a clear message, simple message, without enough terminologies to confuse anyone. Because if an accident happens, the person will not be thinking too much to understand what KUSH means, or no. The person will just have to act. See the substance that is labeled red, it means do not touch. If it is labeled blue, it means it's mandatory. If it is labeled yellow, it means there's a warning. Watch before you cross. If it is green, it means that it's safe to go. That's some colors. That's what you use in communication. There are codes for hazard and risky items or substances. All right. That is one bit of it. That's the communication bit. Who are you communicating with? One, the internal stakeholders, and two, the external stakeholders. Internal stakeholders are the workers. But first and foremost, as I mentioned, is the board and the senior managers, because they give their assent to its existence. The health and safety statement of intent or strategic plan, they give its assent to its existence. So they must know what it is, must be involved themselves. Then trade unions must also know, every worker must know about that health and safety intent. That's the plan, the strategic plan, and how it is executed. You must match all the resources with the plan. The plan must be there, and you have to match the resources with the plan, the human resources, the financial resources, equipment. Make sure the equipments are safe. There's egress. Egress is the outside door, access door. Egress is outside door. If there's emergency, where there's a siren that blows, you have to hit the egress. Emergency procedure has to be properly spelled out. Where there's fire, is there fire extinguisher? What type of fire? Is it a fire that will chemical fire that will require extinguisher that's made of powder and not water. Those are issues that we'll get to as we go along the line. Then, of course, under this execution, the internal stakeholders, we have the workers, we have trade unions, we have the senior managers. Then, of course, when it comes to external stakeholders, we have the insurance companies. Because of claims, civil cases, workers can take the company to court to make a claim for negligence to duty, falling foul to duty of care from the employer, not providing the right equipment and stuff like that, so causing harm. Someone almost chopped off the finger, and they have to stitch it, but there's no insurance in such a case, like in some developing countries. People get accidents whilst working and there's no insurance, so they go with that scar and that damage for life. But that's not right. So then insurance companies comes in, and insurance company make sure that everything is supposed to be right. The health and safety aspect is well established, because if they find out in their audit that some practices have not been properly spelled out in terms of health and safety standards, the plan must match the standard. We'll come to that. So then if it doesn't match the standard, then there's a problem. The insurance will not pay. So that claim will not be taken care of, and the company will have to cough out more money to take care of such cases. All right. You plan against a certain standard. So you are executing the plan against a certain standard. What are the standards? ILO, I mentioned, International Labour Organization, their Occupational Safety and Health 2001 have spelled out what health and safety at workplace should be. And it is in line with ISO 9000 and ISO 14000. ISO 9000 and then ISO 14000. It's also an international quality standard. That is for health and safety. All right. Then the other one is the Health and Safety Global 65 by UK, used by the UK. And they also have spelled out what standards are at each and every kind of workplace, various aspects of the industry. They've spelled out what is expected. Construction is spelled out, chemical inside is spelled out, retail is spelled out. They spelled out all. So then you have to go through that standard. If you match your target, that's your plan. Against that, you have benchmarked with the best practice. The best practice could be another organization, or even with the standards. And first it must be with the standards, and then with any other organization you benchmark. All right. So then that is done. The external stakeholders like insurance, like customers, when they realize that, hey, this company, when they are even delivering goods to you, there's no PPE, nothing, and the workers get hurt, and they themselves, when they are getting closer to the items to receive them, they can get hurt. They won't want to deal with that company anymore. So customers are very important. Though they are external stakeholders, you have to ensure that they are safe. The organization has to ensure that they are safe while dealing with them. Then, of course, you're looking at another external stakeholder being the regulators. The regulators are also important. They come in and then they regulate and make sure that everything is in place. So you would have to deal with them and deal with them cautiously and carefully and cautiously, but dutifully. Carefully, cautiously, and dutifully, such that you don't miss anything and they don't miss anything. Because if they miss anything out of that checklist, whilst they're inspecting and checklist, they miss anything, it is at the detriment of the organization, which is not right. So you would have to make sure that everything is done dutifully. So those are some of the stakeholders. That in its execution, you go on to ensure that periodic emergency testing takes place. Periodic, if it's once a week or once in 2 weeks, you test the emergency procedure, that everybody's on top of it. Even if it's once a month, everybody's on top of it. It shouldn't be longer than once a month. Maybe twice in a month or once a month, there should be emergency testing. The siren should go off, and then make sure that the sirens are working, the fire extinguishers are working. You test all those things. The fire service have to make sure the fire extinguishers and the workplaces are all upright and current and filled. And then the workers must know where the egress is when they hear the siren and go assemble the assembling point and all that. There must be an emergency drill at least once a month for every worker to follow. And then that way, there's some certainty that external stakeholders will have some trust in it. Even external stakeholders as what? Investors, which I've forgotten, investors. If they know the workplace has so much risk, they will not invest. But if they know it has so much risk, and the risks are controlled, spelled out in the statement of intent is controlled, they may what? Put in their money, because you put in your money where your mouth is. They will not put their money where their mouth is not. Where their mouth is flipped or clipped or something, no, they will not. Or is damaged, they will not. Where their mouth is likely to be damaged, they will not put their money there. So those are some of the issues when it comes to execution. Let's take a break again and back. Yeah, back again to the strategic management or strategic planning of health and safety. We've dealt with the planning, we've dealt with the execution. Now let's deal with the next stage, that's the assessment. There are 4 stages. That's the planning, execution, assessment, and continuous improvement. All right. When it comes to assessment, assessment is where auditors, health and safety auditors, internal and external, measure what is existing. So you must have standard. That's why we have the ILO, Occupational Safety and Health 2001, or the ISO 9000 and 14000. Then we have the Health and Safety Global 65 standards. These 3 standards, a country must choose one that it wants or has its own standard that they think that is appropriate for them to decide to use for the country. And every organization in the UK, 5 or more people employed at a workplace must have a written health and safety regulation, and they follow it up. So it has to be assessed. There will be an internal assessor and an external auditor. Internal auditor, who is the assessor, and then the external assessor, who is the external auditor. Okay, so now with the internal auditor, he is going to measure what has been achieved and match it with what you plan. What the statement of intent is, the objectives are to be achieved: 0 accidents, 5 near misses, 2 sick on duty cases. You are now going to measure what has been achieved against what the intent is. The intent is 0 accidents. How many accidents have taken place? So now you take the reports. The internal auditor will take the reports. Internal auditor, in terms of health and safety, will take the reports and go through. Going through means that he or she knows every nook and cranny that is hazardous. Every substance that's hazardous in the organization, he or she knows, and knows the risk points. That's the internal auditor. However, the internal auditor, knowing all this and catching the reports and going through, making sure that it's been reported, it's been recorded, and then what happened, and understands what the record says to be used for remedial measures, he or she has a certain bias, which is a weakness to the internal auditors, health and safety auditors. That is, can we twist a bit to achieve the intended plan of 0 accidents? Possibly it can happen. What about near misses? So don't report that near miss. The supervisor in charge of health and safety, forget about that near miss. Sorry, just get on. Or let me give you some small money and then you just shut up. It didn't happen. That is also there. But that's not what we want. So the external auditor, external health and safety auditor comes in. When they come in, they look at all that stuff, measure everything, make sure that everything is in place where it's supposed to be. Eye washes are where it's supposed to be. Workers have helmets on and all that. Boots, steel-toe boots or boots. They have their gloves on. Anything that should be there should be there. Colors, codes for substances and items are all matched. The floors are properly designed at the workshop. The work floor is properly designed. All that is noted. It's a checklist. They tick, and check everything that way. Meticulous. The external health and safety auditor will do that. However, he or she, or they do not know the hazardous places in the organization unless they are told by someone working in there, the health and safety expert working in there. So they also have a weakness. So in writing this, it means that the internal health and safety auditors manager must be the ones writing the health and safety strategic plan and not by external contractors. When I mention contractors, it means that it comes under internal or stakeholders. Okay, so that also is done by assessment. So when you assess, we have the active assessment and then the reactive assessment. We have active assessment and reactive assessment. When it comes to active assessment, you do a work-based or on-site inspection of every activity that is involved with health and safety that the organization intends to measure and then achieve. It's measurable. Okay. Then, based on that, they'll tell you where there's a shortfall. You're looking at the regulation and looking at the national standards. Where there's a shortfall, they can pinpoint it. Where there are weaknesses, they will pick points. And then they will highlight. And the reactive assessment is where the reports have been generated. A committee has sat on the report, a health and safety committee has sat on the report, peruse it, taking the needed steps. Where remedial measures are supposed to be taken, they have been taken by the active assessment. Then the reactive is what recommendations have been made. The recommendations, have they been implemented? See, that's reactive. Okay, have the recommendations given, have they been acted upon? See, that is how reactive assessment is, meaning that recommendations must be implemented because they tend to be useful. Where there are no fire extinguishers, there should be, because there was a fire case at one point and there was no fire extinguisher. That has also been noted, and so you just have to do those recommendations. So that comes to assessment, but you cannot assess if you don't have a plan. You are assessing based on a determined plan which has been set by the internal health and safety team. There's a plan and there's a target that has been set. So what are targets? Targets are the achievables. See, targets are the achievables. 0 accident is a target. No sleep is a target. Those are near sleep. No. Those are maybe 5 near sleeps. Those are targets. Okay, so nobody should be fall sick at workplace. But if one person falls sick, don't hide it, report it, so that it becomes achievable. Because you are now measuring, it's a gap analysis. You are measuring what you call the plan against the achieved. If what you plan is this, and you achieve the same, then you continue. If what you plan and you overachieved, it means that what you plan is what? Unambitious. So you review. Whilst you review, you are looking for continuous improvement. So when you review that, the set target was what? Unambitious. So now, because we have overachieved, so there's a gap between the set target and then the achieved, the plan against the achieved. This gap has to be filled, and that is what is overly achieved. It needs to be upped. Okay, but if this is the target, the plan, and then you underachieved, that means this gap here. It's possible that the plan is what? Overly ambitious, and so the target is overly ambitious. Meanwhile, the achievable has fallen short. Then it means that you were too overly ambitious, and you have to look at the health and safety plan. Strategy is into the future. It's not a short-term issue. It's into the future. So it could depend on the item or the process or the factory or the workplace. It could be, long-term could be 1 year, long-term could be 3 years, long-term could be 5 years. But generally, we look at 3 to 5 years as long-term, and then short-term as 1 year. A day or immediate to 1 year, then medium term 1 to 3 years. That generally, but it depends on the product and the items that you're working on. Okay, so then that is to what? Review. When you review, either you have underachieved or overly achieved, you review. When you review, then you are doing continuous improvement. That's continuous improvement. The gap analysis helps in continuous improvement. Okay, so that means that the performance and the targets have to look at. So this is the target and this is your performance, or this is your performance. So there must be some changes. That changes is what we are looking at. Those changes could be a change in regulation from National Health and Safety. It could be a change in machinery that needs new standards to be reviewed. Machine could be upgraded, and so new standards must be reviewed. Health and safety standards must be reviewed. It could even mean that the PPEs, some must be reviewed because there's a new machinery or there's a new way of doing things. These are all factors. So whilst you're reviewing, you are into continuous improvement of health and safety. And that's what the strategic plan is also that goes along with it. So when you're reading Health and Safety Global, you will notice that they use the phrases plan, do, check, and act. Plan, do, check, and act. The planning is the planning stage, do is execution, check is assessment, act is what? Review or continuous improvement. We've only used different terms for them, but they all end up in the same direction, implying that when it comes to health and safety planning, this document must be published and placed at all workplaces. It must be in language that is simplistic for everyone to understand. You have to use colors for its execution. You have to use codes for its execution. So anyone who gets to the workplace, before he or she enters the shop floor, he has to be given the proper training before they get onto the workplace. You don't just rush visitors onto the workplace without the proper PPEs. No. They should get to know what the health and safety aspect of it before you take them in, because anything can happen at any time, and they must know where they are supposed to go. If they just enter as visitor, allowed onto the shop floor, and then there's fire, and they don't even know where the egress is, what are you doing? You've killed an innocent person. This is not right, and that has to be corrected. So that's how health and safety becomes paramount. It's paramount when it comes to production and in most activities. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to pause on this, and if you have any question or query, don't hesitate to contact us on the above. The name is H. Kwame Afaglo. Thank you.